Okay, I will call the meeting to order at 6:32 PM. Can I get a roll call, please?
Yep, Maxine Dodson,
Here.
Sam Plaistow,
Here.
Dennis Heffernan,
Here.
Laura Gillette,
Here.
Lucas is not here
He's,
yet.
he's running late, but it'll be excused, yep.
Here.
Rachi,
Here.
Bob Hamilton,
Here.
Julian Kiska,
Here.
and anybody else?
Greg Colby and Mark are here.
Remotely.
They are, Dean said they were here. Can we just get a okay that you guys are there?
Yeah, Greg's there.
Greg's there, okay.
And is Mark there too?
Present.
Okay, yep, thank you.
And that's it.
Okay. I don't see anybody here for budget-related public comment. Oh, sorry.
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I forgot to put it on the agenda. Okay, I just want to move things around a little bit. We have some housekeeping to take care of, and I want to take care of it now. You'll see the minutes that we have in our packet. There was a little confusion because we originally approved the finance budget for 181,575, and that motion carried. And then at the end of the meeting, we went back and added $500 to it for legal. But I used the Board of Selectmen number when I read the motion. So that actually brought that total to 183,825 is what that motion read.
Which one?
And it was also brought to my attention that that $1,000 and change difference is based off of how we're doing payroll, and it was underestimated last year, and this is a more accurate number for that. So where we approved that budget with the higher number, that was the last thing we did. We don't, it should be what we approved, 182,755, and it should be 183,825.
Let me find it.
It's the very last page of the minutes.
You approved 183, whatever. I put the corrected number. I didn't mean to.
Oh, okay, so the minutes did reflect the 183.
Actually, is the number that should have been approved.
That's good.
Focus on the old number, the other number, the 183.
Right, so we didn't vote on that, we voted on a different number, correct?
We voted on a different number, and we were talking about it, and I went,
That's okay.
numbers in it, sorry.
No, so,
That's good.
well,
Yeah.
my
That's what we
concern
need to do.
is that, I spoke to the finance director, and he said that that extra $1,000 is for payroll, so it's really necessary. Do you want to speak a little bit more to that, Greg?
Sure, which part?
The increase, why it needs to be 183.
Right. Back in August of 19, we outsourced payroll, and given the short sample in 2019, we had estimated the 2020, and we were a little low on that estimate. So the extra $1,000 is for the payroll service that is more accurate for a full year versus our 20 estimate.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys want to make a new motion to approve the finance budget for 183,825 to include that increase.
Do we have to take the, is it an amendment?
No, because we didn't restrict reconsideration, so I think we can just do
Oh,
a
okay.
new motion.
Well, then I'll make that motion.
Okay, is there a second?
A second.
Okay, Bob Hamilton seconded it, and the motion is to approve the finance budget for $183,825. Discussion? No,
And that
Council's trying
includes
to
the
find it.
500?
that includes the 500 for legal.
So, I'm sorry,
that number again?
183,825. And that number was 182,825 plus 500.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Greg?
If you take the 182,825 plus 500, it should be 183,325.
325, okay. Sorry about that.
No worries.
I'll change my
Actually,
motion.
that's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, finally found it.
183,325.
Right.
Okay. So that is now the motion.
Which one is that?
Finance.
Oh, I'm looking for the wrong one. That's why.
Okay. Any,
Correct?
180, I'm pretty sure that Greg gave us that number. So that's the 182,825 BOS approved budget plus $500 that we added to legal.
Yes, 183.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yep, that's it.
Okay, so do you want to make the new motion?
New motion made.
Okay. And Bob, would you like to second the new motion?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor of approving the finance budget for $183,325, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Goes.
Abstain? So 7-1-0. Okay, so that housekeeping is taken care of. The printout of the summary sheet that I put in your folder, they're just a little typos that need to be addressed. The human resources personnel line should read $1,910,526 instead of 256.
Say that number again, please.
$1,910,526.
And that was just
A typo. I made that
transpose
same
and-
typo 3 times. The next one, I put down the wrong figure. This wasn't the motion that carried. The actual motion that carried for human services is $41,950. So you got to make that change on,
Say that again, I'm sorry.
under human services.
Yep.
It should read 41,950. And if I did my math correct with all of these typos addressed and changes, the number on the operating budget should be $9,719,246.
Go again, please.
$9,719,246. Did you get the same math, Greg?
No, I've got 9,718,746.
And is that with all those changes?
That's with the 183,325. I don't know, maybe you added the 183,825?
Oh, yeah, that's what I did. Okay, can you give us that number again?
Sure, it's 9,718,746.
Okay. I'll go with Greg's number, that's right, I did add the 8 instead of the 3. Okay, so that sheet is
718.
for everybody's reference. Okay, so the next agenda item is to go over the warrant articles and give our recommendations.
Have we approved the minutes?
I didn't put it on the agenda, I was just gonna wait till the end to
Okay,
do it.
thank you.
So we've had the warrant articles for a week or two. Did everybody have a chance to read through them?
I didn't.
No? We can read
Do we have
them.
an extra set?
They were in our folder from last week.
I have an extra set here, Pete.
You do?
I'll give them to you.
So we can either read through them aloud, but I know that the Board of Selectmen already went through them. We can just give our recommendations on each one. I'm open to suggestions on how people want to handle it. Do you think it would benefit people at home to read them?
I cannot find my copy.
It was in our folder from
Yeah,
last
I
week.
looked
yeah.
at it this afternoon
Oh.
too, and I thought I had it all in this file. but-
It's not as,
It's,
did you want to say something, Bob?
it's actually the voter's guide.
Yeah, I know.
You had your hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say that we can certainly approve the operating budget because we have that figure now. So we just have to plug that in
Right.
and vote on it.
So,
I thought we don't approve the operating budget until after hearing.
no, we're not, we're adding it to our recommendation. Do we recommend the operating budget?
You
That
have to have a
was
figure,
question I had.
We
Do
have the figure.
but the figure might change at the hearing, and
Right, can
Right.
we approve it now, the bottom line?
And then if something happens at public hearing,
Public hearing can't change it, right?
No, deliberative.
deliberative.
The public hearing, they
Right.
can't.
Yeah,
right.
so we should approve.
We should approve.
Okay, so let's put that on for Article P 2103. The operating budget is the number we just had, which I don't.
9/7/18/746.
9/7/18/746. So how do we take the recommendation vote? Just say all those in favor of recommending?
Yeah,
Yes,
the number,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
state the number, yep.
Okay,
all those in favor, yeah.
okay. So all those in favor of recommending Article P 2103 with the operating budget 9,718,746, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Are you opposing?
So that's recommending, not approving.
Recommending. So it's just 7-1-0, 7 recommended, 1.
Have to do a separate motion for the bottom line of the budget?
A motion for what?
The bottom line.
Bottom
yes.
line of the budget.
Oh, I don't think so. I think we just approve each, and then the warrant is what we recommend.
Okay.
Yeah, each one of these is a sort of an entity unto itself.
Right, right.
Okay, so then,
Are you gonna do the,
do we not do the water department ones? Because,
oh, the,
It's-
our recommendation is on
Yeah,
there.
we do.
okay,
And then there is,
Yeah, it's money.
technically, it
Okay.
is money.
so, yeah,
Go around the room. All right, I'll make a recommendation to, now this is, not recommend, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Recommend Article P 2102, the Water Service Incentive Program.
no, that doesn't have
This
an
is,
amount on it.
this isn't the water budget, this is the, this is that bond that they're gonna take, the 450,000.
So we can't, we don't really, is
Well, we're
that,
putting our recommendation
Yeah,
on it.
a recommendation.
Our
of it. I
tally.
just want to make sure people knew this isn't the water department budget.
right, this is,
Correct.
and do we have a figure on that bond?
It says it's 450,000.
Mine doesn't say, oh, okay,
Yeah,
it's
on
up
the top.
top, yeah. 450, okay, so all those in favor of,
Oh, I didn't get a second.
do we have to second for the motions, or we're just taking recommendation?
Oh, yeah, that's right, we are just doing a recommendation.
Yeah. Is that how it, you don't need to take a second for that, I don't think.
know.
You know, Julian?
Julian, what do you guys do, Board of
If you're
Selectmen?
voting on it, you should probably get a
No,
second.
we're recommending. We're giving our numbers to recommend it, is that,
Tally.
Oh, we've always done motions before.
You guys do a second?
We do a motion in a second.
Yeah.
okay,
Well, we'll
Why
do-
change it?
Yeah,
okay. I didn't have a second on mine then, so the operating budget, I didn't have a second on that.
All right, I'll make a second.
I thought Bob did. I thought,
Yes,
I
Bob
Oh,
did.
Bob did?
Yes,
Oh,
because you
Think
changed the
so.
number.
okay.
thought
Do you
it was
have that,
Darrell and then
Charlene?
Bob.
As Bob
Double
as the
check that.
second?
It might have been the Human Service.
Yeah, it's a recommendation, but it's still a vote.
Okay.
right, right.
Does she have in the minutes?
Yeah, I just want to make sure you had that Bob seconded that, okay. Okay, so who seconded yours?
Yeah.
Daryl, okay.
Here's Bob.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Bob. I'll fill you in really quickly. We're just giving our recommendations on the warrant articles now.
Yep.
And we're about to vote on recommending the $450,000 bond for the water program.
Okay.
Okay, so, discussion, what,
Where we have a full board, should we just start over? I know it
I know.
confuses everything.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea.
yeah, we
Think
should
you're
start
better off
over.
having a full board than-
So I will rescind my motion on that. Do we have to make a new motion or just revote?
For the operating budget?
We just voted
Just
again.
give Bob the number,
Okay.
the new number we have for the operating budget, so he'll have it.
We'll just
Okay.
vote again.
You just
So-
revote.
Yeah.
Remotion, revote. That's all
Okay.
you have to do.
We'll just revote. So all those in favor of approving the operating budget for $9,718,746, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Okay, so 810. Thank you. Okay, back to yours. So now we're ready for discussion on this bond and our recommendation.
Did I get a second? Yes, I did, Darrell did, okay.
Any discussion on that? Yeah, Pete.
I would be, as I heard last week, be much more in favor of taking out something like a line of credit rather than the whole bond system and let people go into it as they need it, rather than taking out the whole portion, which we may or may not use for a year or 2 or 3. I don't know about that. But that would be my feeling about it, and that's why I am going to vote no on this warrant article.
Yep, Sam.
Greg, has it been decided that that will be a bond and not well, what type of borrowing? Has that been decided?
No, it has not.
I didn't think so.
Yeah,
We'll
Julian.
explore options if and when it's approved.
Yeah,
If you listen to the Board of Selectmen discussions on this, it's always been intended to only take what we needed. It's just a line of credit that we can go up to 450, unless they give us 0%, which is not doubtly, I wouldn't go with, it wouldn't make sense, like Mr. Bracci says.
so it would just be
It doesn't
as
say here
needed?
we're gonna take which, it's basically, it's to authorize of not more than, which
Right.
means you're not taking $450,000, you can take not more than $450,000, which means you're not taking it unless you need it.
But if we only needed 100,000.
Then we'll
and
only
we
take
took-
100,000.
No, but we took 450 because it was 0 interest or whatever.
It was
How does-
very, very low. I think Greg Colby knows it was really low. It was almost 0. It was extremely low. And it still wouldn't make sense because you get nothing in the bank. Mr. Colby, could
Yeah.
you remember what the interest rate was?
The last bond issue that the bond bank did, I believe it was at 0.86%.
And then again, that's a cost that's passed on to the user who takes the funds.
Is there a reason why you would take up to 450,000 all at once? Like, is there any benefit of doing that? As opposed to like a line of credit as needed?
Line of credit, you're probably paying 2 to 4% interest, and the bond, you're only paying 0.86. So again, we would analyze, the cost benefits of doing both, quite honestly, and recommend a decision, from there. I mean, really, at this point, we need the approval first, and then, that will be step 2, if the voters approve it.
Can I make a comment, Madam Chairman?
Yep,
This is a program that Underwood Engineers and myself and Mr. Colby talked about because it was brought to our attention that there may be people that need or want to connect to the public water system, but the downstroke of the cost to actually connect to their house from the street connection might be more than they have in funds to actually connect. So this incentive program was to reach out to those people and say, if you want to connect and you don't have the cash to connect, and we figured that the range of connection, depending on the type of house and how far back they are from the street, and whether they have to go to the back of the house or through the driveway or whatever, was somewhere in the range of between $5,000 and $10,000 per house, some more, some less. So this was designed for approximately 50 users to apply for this incentive program so that they could connect. Because as you have heard, we're trying to establish a minimum amount of users to help make this system work. So this is a beta test, and the beta test is, we believe that the 50 is going to be almost automatic, that people will access this incentive program and pay the corresponding interest for this money that the town would authorize the borrowing for, and then it would be repaid over a 10-year period, and it would be paid on a quarterly basis with their water bill. We believe that after this program, the first rollout of this beta sample, we believe the second year there's going to be more people saying, can you do this again, because we want to sign on to this program and we don't have the money to pay for the connection, but we want to connect. So that's the premise of the program. So if this were to be defeated at the town meeting, this just eliminates an incentive for people that otherwise cannot afford to connect to the system but want to or need to. So this is totally for people that are in need of money to connect to the system. There's no incentive for the town other than we get more users, but we're not profiting from this. It's just simply a cost to the user, and we just pass it through. So this warrant article is simply a function of the law that requires us to have a warrant article to take out a bond, and it needs the voter approval, which is the majority of all of the voters, not just the water users. But this is specifically targeted to the water users and can only be accessed by the people that are going to connect to the water system. So I just wanted to bring these comments up to clarify if there's something that wasn't clarified previously. Thank you.
I just have a quick question for the town manager, because I really don't know how it's going to happen. If all of a sudden we get 200 or 300 people in the first year, how do we handle that? How do we go about saying, you get the cheap money and this guy doesn't? And it's a question because I really don't know, Mark, what the answer is.
Right. So we're all guessing at how many people they're going to be. So we didn't put out a request for a bond for 200 people. We picked a number that we thought was reasonable, that we thought was going to be sort of automatic based on the numbers that we're seeing and the interest that's been generated by the people that are on a list right now saying, when it comes, I'm interested in connecting. So the answer to the question is this would be followed up in year 2. We would say to them, because if you really think about it, Darrell, if this bond passes with a majority vote in March, and we're turning on the system and connecting people in the fall of 2021, right, and 50 people say, I want to access this program, and we got another 150 that say, well, I want to access it too, then I would come back to town meeting next year and say, look, we got a list of 150 or 200 people, just as you said, that want to do this, and we want to do a second bond to make those people eligible so that they can have the same incentive to connect to the system. So I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you.
Oh, Julian and then Bob.
Yeah, I just want to make note that if someone wanted to do this and we didn't have this program, they could go probably to the bank and try to get a loan. If their credit is bad, they wouldn't get it. If it's good, they're not going to get anywhere near 0.86. So this is a good deal for people, for our residents. This is not really for businesses. This is for our residents. I'm not doing this for businesses. It's for the residents, the people, the regular family people who need some help to get some good water. So that's what the intention of this is, and it would be an awful tragedy if it failed.
Well, Julian, you brought up a good point, one that I was going to bring up. Are businesses going to be excluded from this? And the other question is, what happens with the apartment complexes? Do they get one shot at it, or one for each apartment? Or, that's my question. Is it just, Mark and Greg, you keep saying it's for people. But is that a business, or is that an apartment condo complex?
Well, Mr. Bracci, to answer your question, I don't think that we talked in that much depth about the qualifications, but certainly this is geared towards residents. And I would say that residents in an apartment complex, the board, which is the water commissioners, could make that decision. But I think that the first 50, if there's 50 people that have single-family residents, should be the priority and not an apartment building with residents, because I would just stipulate that I think that the people that are operating a condominium complex or a apartment complex, have the means to install the water other than to access this type incentive. I can tell you that our discussions have been for individual residents and not businesses or commercial enterprises. But I would defer to the Board of Selectmen as the policymakers for them to articulate that intent.
Okay, is there going to be you have to state what kind of resources you have before you get this, or can anyone just apply for it if that's going to be the case,
Oh, like a threshold, like a
Yeah, a
income
threshold of
threshold?
income.
Honestly, that is another level of detail that the board and myself did not get into. We simply wanted to have a beta test here to have the first year have some more concrete numbers as suggested by Mr. Britton, so that we could figure out what to do in the future. Again, this is an incentive for people to connect that can't financially, otherwise afford it. So that's the intent.
Also written in here, it says to authorize the select board to adopt a betterment plan. Julian, do you have any information on what the betterment plan is?
Well, I have no intention of supporting any betterment plan that people have stated in the past that says if the water line comes by your house, it's going to get added to your taxes. The whole entire board, we've had this discussion, or totally against that. So I'm not sure in this wording what the betterment plan is, because I have no way I ever even vote for something like that, because I don't think people, if the water line comes past your house, should have to pay for it. It's always been the intention of only people who use the water pay for the water.
So I have an answer to Ms. Millet's question. So the betterment plan is for that individual user so that the cost can be attached to their bill so that they pay back the money. So it's an individual betterment plan for that person that decides to access this incentive program.
So their assessment will be higher?
Their water bill will have a assessment on it that is the amount on a quarterly basis to repay the increment of the money that they have in effect borrowed through this loan program.
Yeah, so I'm reading this too, and it got my attention as well. Should maybe it be worded to adopt an individual user betterment plan? And then that way it takes away the doubt that it's for everybody.
Well,
I
if you
understand
read,
Mrs. Millet's reading of it, how she could understand it or interpret it.
if you read the comma after betterment plan, it says whereby the cost of the improvements to any privately owned service lines or infrastructure will be assessed to and reimbursed by the owners of those water lines and infrastructure that are specifically benefited by such improvements, such that the intent is the cost of the program will be paid by the users through betterment or user fees. So the next sentence does explain that betterment plan is for those individual privately owned service lines.
So that answers your question, Ms.
Yeah,
Paulette?
yeah, it
Because
does.
I know it was a concern all along. All right.
Thank you.
So I think I understand it correctly, and I just, unfortunately, the raise and appropriate line, which is, we have to have it, it's a scary line that everybody doesn't like. And please, Mr. Town Manager and Finance Director, correct me if I'm wrong, but what this is basically is allowing the Water Department to finance the construction through addition to the water bill, in extremely simple terms. Is that correct?
That's correct. In fact, more specifically, to the individuals that decide to access this incentive program to borrow the money through the town borrowing money. It's a straight pass-through to those consumers, those individual residents that want to connect.
Can I just
Thank you.
get you to confirm, regardless of whether we get a bond for the 0.86 or we end up with the credit line at 2%, those interest rates are reflected on the individual user payments, correct? The town doesn't have to cover the interest?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
So in order for me to get it straight, the loan that the homeowner will take will be from the street to their house, and they're not paying for the pipe going down the street. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And
No one is paying for any pipes to go down any streets with the current program. All of that funding, $10,112,000 for the grants for the potable water project for the town of Plaistow have been paid for by the state. So none of the construction you see out there is being paid by anybody but the state. This is 100% through grants.
thanks.
Are we ready to call the recommendation vote? Any other questions? No? You read it, it was your motion, go ahead. You want, all those,
Just call for a vote.
yeah, so all those in favor of recommending the $450,000 water service incentive program, say aye.
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 How many was that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 2 opposed? Opposed. 7-0 recommendation. Okay. The next one is P2104, shall the town raise and appropriate as an operating budget for the water department, not including appropriations by special warrant and other appropriations voted separately. The amount set forth on the budget posted with the warrant or as amended by vote of the first session for the purpose set forth therein totaling $431,300. Should this article be defeated, the operating budget shall be $431,300 with certain adjustments required by previous action of the town or by law, or the governing body may hold one special meeting in accordance with RSA 4013 XXI to take up the issue of revised budget only. Is there a motion on the floor to recommend?
I'll make a motion to
I'll second it.
recommend Article P 2104.
Okay, Julian,
I'll second
seconded.
it.
Discussion?
Greg, how much is in the Water Enterprise Fund now, about?
I want to say it's, from our last discussions and one of the last meetings, 500 to 550,000. I'm thinking off the top of my head. A significant amount of money, no doubt.
Bob?
Wait, that
How
was
much-
555,000. How much do we get each year? How much is
it's
added to
been-
the?
The revenue, if that's what you're adding, being added is around $125,000 a year. over the past few years.
So if I'm correct, if we get $125,000 a year, we have 1.5 years to fund the water department through the enterprise fund. Does that sound reasonable?
No, because once users start hooking up, then the revenues will be increasing based on the sale of water. And once the water gets turned on, those revenues are gonna go up, from the 125.
Okay?
Yeah, so,
Did you had something to say before? Go ahead, Bob.
When do we
Could I-
anticipate, when do we anticipate the water will be turned on?
Right now, the most accurate prediction is next fall, but that is subject to any construction delays or permitting delays, but the target is next fall. To be candid with you, I don't expect that we're going to have clear sailing and have no interruptions or no delays or no unexpected delays. I'm thinking that we're going to be organizing the connection in the fall, but I think that we'll be up and running by the spring of 2022. And if I could make a comment to Mr. Bracci's question and to Greg's follow-up. So the number that's in the enterprise fund right now does not include the 2020 assessment for the fire suppression system as it currently exists. So you could add another 125 or more to that number. So say it was at 550, it would be at 675. So I just wanted to let you know that there is more revenue that hasn't been recorded for 2020 yet.
Thank you.
Bob?
I was under the understanding that the businesses that are hooked up to fire suppression are billed quarterly. Is that not correct?
That's not correct.
Okay.
Darrell?
Peter, I just want to understand your question. Are you suggesting that we bypass this and use the funds that are in there now to cover what they're looking for?
The 431,000?
Yeah. I
Yes.
might be misinterpreting what you're saying, that's all. In other words, are you thinking that there's enough money already in that account so we don't have to take and ask for anything more?
That's what I would think.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Well, it looks like the budget is being funded by the Water Enterprise Fund, and if there's over $500,000 in the Enterprise Fund, and the budget's 431, why don't we take the budget money out of the Enterprise Fund?
you are.
It's
That's
where
what
it's
they're
coming
doing.
from.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
That's
that
what
is
they're
where
Okay.
it's coming from.
All right, I just wanted to make sure I understood what you were saying,
Okay.
that's all.
Okay. So, call to a vote for recommendations. All those in favor of recommending Article P2104, say aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? So 900 recommendation. Do you want to read the next one?
The contingency fund, Article P2105, shall the town raise, excuse me, vote to raise and appropriate $80,000 for unanticipated expenses that may arise during the course of the 2021 fiscal year. Any appropriation left in the contingency fund at the end of the year will lapse into the general fund unassigned fund balance. And the article is for $80,000.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to recommend that?
I'll make a motion to recommend it.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion?
I have a question.
Yes.
Do we have enough money left over in the general fund this year so that we don't need to take and recommend this one? And again, that's a question for, I would say, Greg and the town manager. There may be something that I'm not seeing that's coming up that they're worried about or whatever, but if there seems to be enough money left in additional overages from what we were talking last week between, I don't know, about 250,000 or something like that. But that, and I'm well aware that if something's coming up that we might not see on the horizon, we don't want to be shortfalled either. But that's a question more, I guess, for Greg and Mark.
Go ahead, Greg, I'll let you go first.
I guess the $80,000 is a contingency, which, as you state, with the Britain, if we see it on the horizon, that doesn't qualify for contingency usage. This is for the truly unanticipated, that if the heating system at Town Hall tomorrow needs to be replaced, and we need to come up with, $30,000, $40,000. It's those unanticipated costs that, quite honestly, several years ago with the budget committee, we had lowered the budget in anticipation that this contingency was going to be there instead of having a higher budget, thus raising money every year for something that was unanticipated that may never have happened. But with regards to, you say, what is left this year, I had a handout tonight that shows the balance remaining of approximately 256,000. And if you recall the discussion we had last week, 31 months of vacancies in the police department, by my calculation, total 253,000. So if we had a full police department this year, we'd be looking at about $3,000 left in the budget. So I don't think that there's $80,000 left over, as if you will, for emergencies within the operating budget just with that.
Okay, that's a good
I don't know if I've
explanation.
answered your question or not, but I can let Mark respond as well.
Well, that answered it,
Okay, just another way of saying what he's saying is that the contingency is the vehicle to get into the general fund, the unassigned fund balance in 2021 to get the up to the 80,000, which is restricted by law of not more than 10% in for the contingency fund warrant article. So in essence, the surplus goes into the unassigned fund balance, the general fund, and this is the vehicle in 2021 to access that same fund under your theory. It's just that you can't access the general fund just because you need money. This is the vehicle to get there.
Okay.
Greg, how much have we used out of the contingency funds in the last, how much is left over in the last 2 years from that, this warrant article type of thing?
This past year, 2020, we have spent $7,800, I believe, out of the contingency account. So the balance that was raised will be going back to the general fund surplus, which we had $80,000 last year. I don't have numbers handy from 2 years ago.
Okay. But we've only used $7,800 out of it this year. And what was that for?
I have to look it up. I don't recall.
Oh,
Mark, was it it was the sewer line replacement at Park, I believe.
Yes, it was the unanticipated hitting the septic system and the electrical and the incidental things that happen during construction. That's exactly what it was.
So call to the vote of recommendation. All those in favor of, how do we work, recommending Article P 2105, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain? So. Dennis, Julian, and Bob.
350.
So 360. The next one is Article P P2106. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate 55,000 needed to fund the Phase 2 of the Salt Shed Solar Project? The funds will be withdrawn from the general fund, unassigned fund balance, and energy capital reserve fund previously established.
Make a motion to recommend.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion? Yeah, Pete?
If, and I say if, with capital letters, the encumbrance for solar panels, number 8 on the thing goes through, and this warrant article goes through, that's going to be somewhere around $80,000 for solar panels. I don't have the number, I didn't get any.
So it would be 63,966 plus this 55,000, is that what
Yeah.
you're asking?
That would be an awful lot of money, so I can't in good heart think that we should put in a warrant article with the possibility that we might get the encumbrance for the other money.
Yeah, Julian?
I think it's a little flawed in that argument. That encumbrance is for the Phase 1, which has already been voted by the voters in the previous warrant article, and that's only because it wasn't able to be completed this year. Phase 2 is to finish it or to add the second half of what we didn't have the money for, is Phase 2. Phase 1, the encumbrance is for something that was already, was going to happen before as part of the salt shed project, and that's why that's being encumbered. That only puts about half the solar panels up, because that's all that money could bring it to. And so Phase 2 is independent of that, and it's using the little money we still have left in the Energy Capital Reserve Fund, because we didn't get the money last year because it failed. So we're using what we have in there to get this project done with the additional amount of $15,000, because we got an estimate of we got an approximate estimate what would it cost to complete the project. So to complete the project, that's where the numbers come from. We're putting with the Energy Capital Reserve that we already have, and have to supplement it just a little bit so we could actually finish it.
Chairman, could I
Yeah.
follow up on that?
Yep.
I'm sorry, my connection got disconnected, so you might see me leaving and coming back. I actually missed the end of the contingency vote, but I'll get that later on. So just to clarify on the salt shed language, I expect the language is going to change on Monday night, and that is because the previous information that was used to article had assumed that that the salt shed previous warrant article was a lapsing article. It turns out it's not lapsing, it's a non-lapsing. So that money is not going to be encumbered in the encumbrances for 2020. And in fact, it's going to come off of the encumbrances that may have already been there. So all that language that is here is essentially going to get worked on Monday night with the Board of Selectmen to change around this wording to get it right and take away the encumbrance language.
I don't think we can take and do anything with this.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
So what you're saying is, because we haven't had that meeting yet, that we're going to have to make this happen, we're going to have to raise the amount on this warrant article. Is that what you're saying?
No, we're not saying to raise anything. You're going to ask for just the amount that you need for this Phase 2 for solar panels. In other words, you don't have to combine the previous money because that's already there and non-lapsing. So you're just going to ask for the
So we
money
don't
you
have to
need.
encumber it because it doesn't lapse? Okay,
Correct.
I understand now.
I was just gonna ask you, Julian, because I'm no longer on that committee, but I did work with revision quite a bit on the solar panels. Is this a new figure from, like, when I first started talking? Because it seems a lot higher than the emails that I had from him.
Yes, it was looked into again to get an estimate on approximately what it would cost to complete the project. It's not a contract, it's not signed, but they gave us the estimate,
But
so
it
we had
went-
something to work from.
It went up quite a bit from when I was working on it like a year and a half ago. The prices of solar panels just keep going up, or,
Well, I don't know what what your figures were based on at that time?
It was,
So it may not have been the same apples and apples, I don't know.
I worked very closely on
Yeah.
that project and gave him the dimensions of the roof and everything, so I thought it was accurate. It just seems like a much higher number than I thought it was.
Just the last
So
discussion.
I can speak to that.
Yeah,
So, my recollection is that, Revision and another company came in, and there was a number that was put out, and, you may remember the exact number. I thought it was somewhere around, like $68,000. It was in that range. And then when it went out to RFP for the same specifications that we talked about, and the company sat in that room and said around $68,000, when they did the RFPs and Tim Moore received all those, I believe that the lowest price came in at 110.
okay,
So
so it did
the
go up.
Yeah, so the problem was what somebody said in that room and represented what the cost would be. That was carried forward with the warrant article for the salt shed and solar panels. And then when we went out to RFP to actually do that project based on what was said in that room to everybody, all of a sudden, the price was different. So that's what really happened. No one has said that the price of the equipment went up. I think it was a bait and switch. I think they told us one thing and they did another.
Okay, yeah,
That's possible. Now I recall, we actually got two bids, one from a company down in New Jersey, I believe it was, and Revision, which is local. Their numbers, as far as price, were pretty much almost the same. Their numbers of how much kilowatts you were going to get out of the panels was pretty much in the ballpark the same. And we did choose to go with Revision Energy only because it was the local company, and if there's any issues or fixes, they wouldn't be traveling all the way from New Jersey. So the big deciding factor was who's closer, who would give us a better service. It really wasn't the amount as much. And yes, the number came in originally the number came in way higher than we had money for. So then we had to go back to RFP and give us a smaller system that we could afford because we were limited to what we could spend. So then that became phase one. Originally, I think our intention was to do the whole project. But then what happened is we didn't have the money to do the whole project.
well, when
Yeah.
I worked with him, I was under the impression that the whole project was a lot less money than.
Well, that was my
what-
impression
what it
too.
came
I
in.
think everybody's impression was
Yeah.
that. And then when it came down to the real thing after RFP, it didn't turn out that way. But the funny thing was, both companies came in pretty close on their numbers. So it wasn't one company baiting and switching. Another company way outside gave us pretty much the same numbers.
Right.
So I guess somehow there must have been some miscommunication or something, and they were originally giving an estimate based on some other facts that maybe they misinterpreted.
Yep.
But the thing was, when the RFP came in, the numbers were there, and we could not get, it was almost double the price of what we had to spend.
Exactly,
So we had to
yeah.
cut back the
There's something-
project.
There's something wrong there. I mean,
Yeah.
if you send an RFP out and you're given a number, even if it's a verbal, just as a rough number.
Well,
People
originally
come
it wasn't, originally it wasn't an RFP. It was just, we had taken a estimate on what it would cost. It wasn't an RFP.
But that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, Julian. You don't, even an estimate, you don't give an estimate unless you're less than reputable, okay? You don't bait and switch to that extent. You might do it a little bit, but not to that extent. So there's something more to it. I don't know what it is. I mean, maybe they're proposing a better system, maybe they're proposing something more, I don't know, but that just, it doesn't play well.
Well, I can't tell you exactly what happened there, but it is what it is, and the numbers are what they are.
Yep.
And 2 RFPs came in, officially signed and documented.
I
This
was
is the
just-
amount to pay, and this is what, if you want the project done, you have to deal with what you had to spend, which is what we had to do. Energy Committee had to cut back on the RFP, put an RFP out again, and they both came back with numbers which again were very similar, but it wasn't the full system we wanted. Our intention was a few years ago. So, that's what happened.
It sounds to me that this warrant article is going to be changed next Monday night by the Board of Selectmen, and we should wait until Tuesday to vote on it.
Yeah, we're
Agreed.
meeting
Yeah.
earlier before public hearing, so we can go over it on Tuesday. All right, so we'll withdraw. Well,
Would anybody have the warrant article that you're talking about, Julian?
From last year?
Yeah, from last year. You say it was a non-lapsing warrant article. I don't have it in front of me, but
I don't either.
I thought it said that it expired December 31st.
Right behind you, Mr. Bracci, is the book, and you can pull up the warrant article.
There it is. All right.
This is 17,
We need to, yeah, that's an old one.
15, 16, 17.
That doesn't help us.
I guess I can't pull it up.
I used to bring it to every meeting until I didn't use it so much, it was too heavy to carry.
Well, we can put this on the,
I'm not sure of that.
we can put this on the burner until next week and maybe have that number when we discuss it again next week.
I don't know, Mr. Colby might be looking it up right now. They have a computer in front of him.
There's not a 2019 annual report right there on that shelf, Max?
I just looked, it was 16, 17, and 18.
I put a 19 up there, somebody must have grabbed it.
Yeah.
Used to have the current ones
You
there.
don't have one, Julian?
No, I stopped carrying it, thing's heavy.
Okay,
So, I can tell you, I'm the one that looked it up, and it is a non-lapsing, but I agree that you should see it yourself. Someone's got to have one or be able to pull it up online.
Is that a book on that table over there?
I can't tell.
All right, well, we'll look at it.
That's where they used to be.
Yeah, we got
We'll
time.
follow up on it next,
Yeah, we'll
on Monday,
follow
once
up.
we have the numbers.
Yeah.
We'll go over it next week. The next one is
24-hour coverage.
P2107. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $134,000 to be added to the fire department annual operating budget to fund 24/7, 365-hour coverage for calls of service for pre-hospital emergency medical care, fire suppression, and rescue services. This amount will be included in the operating budget starting 2021. Is there a motion to recommend that for 134?
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
Dennis, discussion? I mean, this is what we proposed, taking it out. I think we're all probably in favor of it. Anybody have anything else to add?
Yeah, and the number is lower than it was when it first came up, too.
It was
It was like 170 something, I believe, originally or something. then
Yeah.
Yep.
They, chief brought it down to 134.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor of recommending Article P21-7, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
So 910.
Nope.
I mean, 810, sorry. Okay, the next one is to create and deposit to revaluation capital reserve fund, Article P2108. Shall the town authorize the establishment of a capital reserve fund to meet our constitutional and statutory requirement that assessments are full and true value at least as often as every 5th year? Furthermore, to raise and appropriate the sum of $35,000 towards this purpose and to appoint the selectmen as agents to expend from the fund. It's anticipated that this revaluation will take place in 2026. Is there a motion to recommend $35,000 for Article P2108?
I'll recommend Article P21-08.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Discussion?
Discussion?
Yep.
Isn't there a way that we can just do it by year, like 5,000 or 8,000 a year, rather than going to the whole 35?
Yeah, Julian.
I believe it's more than 35. This is just the first, it takes, to do a full evaluation is more than 35,000. This is to split it up over 5 years. So that we don't end up spending 5 times as much all of a sudden in one budget year and have to come up with it. Just keep the budget from going up one in the 5th year every year, every time it comes around.
Bob?
I'm not sure whether Julian can answer this or not. Does this eliminate the statistical update in the in-between years?
That is always the vote of the Board of Selectmen, year to year.
So the answer is no.
Funny.
There's no guarantee, and I can't make that
Okay.
guarantee.
Very good.
I would just hope that it would be avoided, like going 100% when you do it instead of 90 or 95, which then puts you in that danger of going way out of whack. It's been talked about, and I proposed at some point, instead of waiting 5, we were doing 20% every year at one point, which means some people's were new evaluations, some people's were not new evaluations, which it doesn't really, I thought it wasn't good equity because some people are working on the new numbers, some working on the old numbers. And then it was basically, sometimes 5 years is a long time. So it's one of those things, do you do it, don't do any statistical updates. But if going 5 years without one, we don't know what the future brings. If you did an evaluation every 3 years, then a statistical update is probably less likely because things don't change that much. But unless you've got the crystal ball and you know what the answers are, we don't.
Could someone explain to the people at home what the difference is between the valuation, revaluation, and a statistical update, how they're different? Does anyone know?
Well, the statistical update looks at some of the new numbers and figures, but doesn't actually go to every property and look at every single one of them. It basically looks at the average value. It's just, this is really oversimplified.
It uses it like Zillow and says this is what houses.
Well, they don't really use Zillow,
For,
but
but-
Zillow is usually close, but they don't use Zillow. They can.
Statistics?
Still, sales statistics, yeah.
They go by sales and whatever. Well, full evaluation is they have to go out to every property and actually look at it, inspect, and check it, and to see if all the facts fit
Yeah.
on the current property.
Bob,
A
you
statistical update basically
It's just number crunching.
recalculates things
Yeah.
based upon all the new information that has been gathered over the course of a year.
Okay. Bob, you had your hand up first.
Yeah, if I read this correctly, this is to raise the sum of $35,000 towards the purpose of the evaluation, which will take place in 2026. So we're raising $35,000 for an evaluation that's going to take place 5 years from now.
It's gonna be 35,000 each year until
No,
2026, right?
Yes.
the values of new cost 35,000, doesn't it?
Just more.
I heard that we were doing it over a period of time so that in 5 years, we wouldn't get slammed. But if I look at this, we're not doing another full evaluation for 5 years.
Right, so this is establishing the fund and putting a preliminary deposit in it. Nowhere does it say that's going to pay for the full amount of the evaluation.
It's an
So,
estimate based on what we know the usual costs are.
okay, so you're telling us that if we're putting this into the fund to, for this down the road, we're going to still have to add to this again next year and the year after and the year after?
Yes.
Right, or you end up adding 5 times that all in the 5th year, all at one slap.
Well, we did that last year. Our assessing budget was very high because of that, correct?
Correct.
Over 300,000.
Yeah.
But we didn't spend it all because things went bad with the people that were doing
But
it.
we
So
did
we did not
budget.
spend it all.
But we did budget for it last
Well,
year in the
we
budget.
still have to do it this coming year, but we're using that money from last year.
Bob?
I'd like to give further clarification about statistical update versus values anew. Statistical update is normally just done on residents because there's not enough sales of commercial to even consider doing them. Statistical updates are just local sales within the town. In other words, if you have a neighborhood and you have houses that sold, your house equivalent will go up accordingly based on the sale of the house. Values anew, which is done in most towns every 5 years, is a regional thing. That's why it costs more. They regionalize it. That's why you'll see commercial properties be changed as well as residential. So it's more of a regional thing, which explains why a statistical update is so much less money. It's not as complicated.
Yeah, that's true. Now, it is a history of that. We didn't do the commercials a lot of times because they didn't have enough sales to be able to come up with a number. And that's kind of our local issue. It doesn't happen like that in every town. So yeah, but pretty much what Bob says, it's cost less because it's not as thorough and you don't do as much.
Yes.
But the values anew is a thorough assessment of everything.
It's based
Including
on,
all properties.
it's based on regional sales,
Okay.
not town sales.
So the average assessor can't do the job. You got to have someone that is an expert in that area that knows how to do it. So it usually costs more because you can't use your standard everyday assessor to do it. It's more qualified assessors too.
I'd like one more clarification. That 20% that's done every year, that's when they come around and measure your property. They do not change your assessment unless they find that you put on an addition or added a shed or added air conditioning and they see the condenser and you didn't go to the town and get a permit for it. That's what that 20% is. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so we'll call to the vote to recommend this. All those in favor of Article P 2108, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It was just Julian. Just Julian.
That's me.
Okay, the,
Doesn't hurt me. I get hit the 50 like everyone else does. So. I'm not hurting.
the next one is the Capital Reserve Fund Energy. Article P 2109, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be deposited into the existing Energy Capital Reserve Fund? Is there a motion to recommend that?
I'll make the motion.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Bob will second. Discussion?
Yeah, I'll just say the lights in this room right now, that came from the energy fund. So we'll start seeing those savings, when we look at our future bills.
Do you have,
That did it pretty good.
do you have any future projects in the pipeline that this would go towards?
We have a lot of discussions, but then again, you can only do what you have the money to work with. So we're depleting with the solar thing, a lot of the fund that's already there, so we'll have to depend on this. We've been taking the low-cost, more beneficial return on investment things first, and that's pretty much what we work on. There's all kinds of, energy doesn't just say lighting. It can, we negotiated the street lighting, the library got all converted previous years. That ended up being an estimated $8,000 a year savings. It ended up, actually, it was $12,000 in the first year. So actually, the estimates were way better, or the reality was better than the estimates. We'll see how town hall turns out when, it just needed to be done. It's not only just, it costs less, but you won't have to replace them. It doesn't take labor. It's got to replace fluorescent bulbs all the time. And it's a better quality of light for the people who work here and for meetings. We're probably going to be looking at the safety complex, which has a lot of lighting. And unfortunately, when they built that safety complex, which I was highly against, and so was the Energy Committee, they put fluorescent lightings in a brand-new building, which I'm not afraid to say I was appalled. And even though I spoke up during that time, I got no support. And what was done is done. You still have a set of lighting that is going to cost money to replace bulbs, and it's still going to cost more to run. So at some point, it's going to have to get done there too.
Bob?
I'd like to make a recommendation. I feel as though last year that this committee did not recommend the energy deposit because there was no program, there was no plan to use it for specific things. You had a lot of things in the pipeline, but my suggestion is to narrow it down to a project so that people will vote for a specific thing rather than maybe we'll do it for this or maybe we'll use it for that kind of thing. I'm just
Yeah, I agree with you.
suggesting.
I agree with you that it'd be good to do that. Our energy committee meeting tomorrow, for some reason, got canceled by the chair. I don't know what the reasoning was. But really, it comes down to any projects we like to do, comes down to what we have to work with. We did our energy audits. It looks like the safety complex is probably for lighting is the next hit. And that's not going to be cheap, and I don't think $15,000 will even cover it.
Sue?
Julian, do you know what's in that fund right now,
I was going to ask.
the balance?
Could I ask Greg Colby on that?
It's in about $40,000.
Thank you.
Does that include what might be coming out for the solar panels? Does that include,
Yep. That's withdrawal.
That would be for the solar panels.
so then it would be zero
Yeah, 'cause that was-
after
So
that?
basically zero, yes.
Spends it all. That's why we have to take some from the general from the unassigned fund.
Cheryl?
I think that anything like this is a good idea personally, but I think, as stated, you have to show a return on investment or give an estimate of what people are going to get back for their money. I think if that's done, then it's usually a no-brainer. I mean, the money coming in will well offset what you're putting out, as long as we know what it is. So I think that, you know, I'm in favor of doing this kind of thing. I think it's easier to sell to the people of the town if we know exactly what the estimate's going to be. It's not, nobody's asking for hardcore numbers, just what the estimate's going to be.
I think the return on investment, where they were telling us with the solar panels project, is about
Yeah, I saw that.
8 to 10 years. But you know what? Those numbers change all the time because it depends. When the electric rate goes up, the return on investment goes up.
Right.
Because it
And I
changes
think-
all your figures.
I think
Yeah.
if we're talking about lighting, though,
Yeah.
it's very easy for the electric company to take and give you an ROI on, if you're replacing all the lighting in this building, they can give you an ROI, or an estimate anyways, of what your savings is going to be. And again, I'm for this thing. I just think that we need to take and be able to sell it, and the way to sell it is to show that there's a return.
Okay, so should we?
Well, it does. I mean, it's the only warrant article, the money that's ever been voted on, that actually gives money back. No other warrant article ever gives money back. I mean, going down the road, when the loan, the zero interest loan that Unitil gave us for the streetlights, for instance, that's usually a it used to be $99,000 a year bill. Well, it's not going to go to zero, but it's going to be maybe $20,000 a year, but that'll take effect once it's paid off. And you're going to see that investment going forward. Any lighting, anything that has, building that has a lot of lights, and you reduce it to a third or 20% of the bill, you can't argue those numbers. Especially, the other thing is, these lights can last 20 years.
No, I
No
think-
fluorescent bulb will ever last 20 years. You have to replace them every 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, I don't think that's the
Yeah.
issue.
I think we all know that it's a worthy
Yeah.
fund
Right.
to create and add to, but without knowing what your $15,000 is
Exactly.
specifically going for, it might be hard for the people to
Yeah,
say,
but
yes.
you can't guarantee the future, but you can go by what the record is so far. We've done a few projects already now, and you can tell from the library alone how much was invested versus how much was saved already.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted some of that in the warrant article, the explanation part, came
Well-
part of the warrant, but I have not been successful in getting those put in there yet.
Okay, so,
Because a history of what you saved on previous projects is a good example. It's not a guess, it has happened.
I agree. Okay, so, we can move to a vote to recommend this. All those in favor of recommending Article P 2109, say aye.
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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 opposed. 3, 4. So 5, 4, 0. Okay, the next one. P 2110, shall the town vote to establish an information technology capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35-1 for the purpose of funding major infrastructure for all the town's computerized systems as needed in the future, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $25,000 to be placed in this fund. Further, to name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from said fund.
I'll make a recommendation to approve this warrant article.
A motion to recommend.
Motion to approve.
Recommend,
I'll recommend.
I'll second it.
okay. Discussion?
I'll, if I could, I'd say only one thing. Have a subsidiary that, when you see ransomware, that we're being ransomed now for a little over $1.5 million. It doesn't take much to get onto you. And our insurance company, thank God, is paying it, but it's, there's caps on the insurance, so if it's being used for this type of thing, which I'm sure it is, I'm certainly in favor of it.
Yeah, Julie?
And I'd like to add to this, it's not, that is one of the factors, but when I first came on as selectman, because I didn't know what was going on at town hall before that, and how the business worked here, the computer systems in here were so archaic, old, the technology they were using was old, the vulnerability was extremely high, because nobody maintained, I'll tell you what, nobody really maintained what was going on in this building as far as the computer and technology infrastructure. And I only speak from that because I came from that industry. And in my civilian job. And it was really outrageous. They kept trying to, they were basically not spending the money to update things. And the cost of one of those phishing incidents, the ransomware happens, it's not only the money it's going to cost to recover from it. Could you imagine town hall not being able to do car registrations for a month or two because they can't get the records, and people can't pay their bills, they can't pay their taxes, and they can't, you know, they can't do their car registrations and whatever because the whole building is down? That would be, there's a cost of that as well, that the town can't do business. And also, if they get personal information of people, that's also not a good thing. So it's a couple things. We have been playing catch-up the last few years, trying to get the technology in this building up to speed, and we're doing a very good job, but unfortunately, it's not cheap, especially when you're starting from almost scratch.
Julian, didn't we just change that server and get a new company to run all this? And don't they have all that? Didn't we get all that? Didn't we get all that stuff when we did this stuff with the new company?
The new company came in, did what they could do. They then we went on to get recommendations of what needs to be upgraded and whatever, and that's what we're working on right now. I guess I personally feel that the people who did our systems previously did not do a good job, and that's what put us in the situation we were in. Why it happened, I don't know. It was under another previous town manager, maybe because he told them not to spend it. I don't have that answer because I wasn't there. But what we got left with was extremely poor. And we're trying to recover from that. And we don't want a disaster to occur in the future, so we have to move forward, get the things up to speed. Once we get up to speed, then we'll get into, let's say, you call it the maintenance mode, where it doesn't cost so much.
Who says that we're not up to speed?
Well, we had professionals come in and evaluate our systems, and the town manager could speak higher on that because he directly deals with them. They've come to Board of Selectmen meetings, and we've had the discussions with them as well. Can you add something?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
We brought in experts for an independent audit. They were, in the audit, there was things that were of high importance, medium importance, and low importance. And we prioritized the high importance items and contracted, when we changed vendors, contracted to address the high importance items, which is exactly what you're referring to with the ransomware, the viruses, and the security. And we've been very successful at avoiding being taken hostage. So we have, although nothing's 100%, we're very high up on that scale, close to the 100%, with the redundancy and the backup and so forth. Selectman Kieska and the other selectmen are aware because they've had meetings with these vendors, and they've gone into non-public to discuss some technical details because it's a form of terrorism when people are taking your system hostage and asking for money, which is happening to other communities. So it's not something that gets fixed in a week or 2 weeks or a month or perhaps even a year, but I think that they can make a pretty huge dent in it in a year to address all the high priority things. We're just finishing up most of the high priority things now. And we're looking to secure our server that's in the basement that's unsecured, and we're looking to secure that and so forth. So, it's anybody that has had to perform this type of a role in business. It's not you just bring somebody in and it's changed in a week. It's a long process. But we're in a better position now than we've been in when I first came here 4 years ago.
And, go ahead, Bob. I had a question too.
Was, Mark, didn't someone mention that the server was moved to the safety complex?
No, we talked about that we have to move the current one there. But when the safety complex was built, that provided us with the opportunity to increase our capacity and our speeds and secure the new servers. There is requirements for both police and fire to have separation from, because of records purposes and privacy. In other words, the requirements called CJIS, which has to do with law enforcement, and that server has to be firewalled and protected so that people can't get into that. And same thing with the medical, with privacy information for the medical calls and the HIPAA. So in theory, the best case which we're headed for is to have all three of our servers in a secure server room, even though they'll be doing separate functions, and they can provide redundancy for us if one server goes down.
I hear, thank you.
My question was, there is money in the 2021 budget under other general government that was added specifically for IT, correct?
Greg, why don't you handle that, because you've been dealing with the vendor.
Yeah, yes, the IT budget from 2020 versus 2021 is higher to address, ongoing, monitoring and things of that nature and services that we're receiving that we weren't previously.
That answers
Yeah,
my
I think
question.
that's taking care of our immediate issues.
Okay,
And then this is so we can continue doing the improvements that over the years we didn't do, which brought us to this situation.
okay, yeah, Bob.
I believe we also have in the budget leases on at least one of our servers, if not both. Is that correct? Are we leasing these servers?
Yes.
We have one.
We're leasing one of them.
And yeah, let me just tell you that I was on the job in my first year when I was told by the IT person, the contractor, the vendor, oh, by the way, your server could crash at any minute. It's end of life, it's legacy equipment, and it could go anytime, and you're going to be in big trouble. And my response was, why are you telling me this now, and why didn't you tell me this before? Of course, it was before my tenure. And I got a lot of shoulder shrugging and, excuses. So at that time, and I believe Mr. Bracci was on the board then, I'm fairly certain he was. And I came to the board and said, we told them the predicament we were in, and I had to find a solution. And the solution was to enter into a emergency lease for that server because it wasn't budgeted for that year. So you can appreciate that if you don't have it budgeted and you have to do something, you got to start thinking outside the box. And that's why we have that lease. But we don't go into leases for servers. We're not planning to do that in the future. That was an emergency thing that it was equivalent to having a gun held to my head. And I had to come up with a solution, and I brought it to the board, and the board authorized it.
So we can move to a vote on recommending this? All those in favor of recommending Article P2110, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? So 4, 5, 0. Do we have a number on the cap yet? That's still to be determined?
Again, that's going before the board on Monday night, and that's the board's pleasure on that number. So if you can delay it till next Tuesday, we can give you that number based
Okay.
on what the board decides.
Okay, we'll put that on the back burner for, yeah, you can. So we'll discuss that before the public hearing next week.
I'll read it and make a motion to recommend Article P 2112, the transfer to Capital Reserve Fund, self-contained breathing apparatus, SCBA. Shall the town vote to raise and appropriate $22,122 to be deposited into the existing fire department SCBA Capital Reserve Fund. The funds will be withdrawn from the general fund unassigned fund balance. Furthermore, name the Board of Selectmen as agents to expend from the fire department SCBA Capital Reserve Fund.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, Bob seconded that. Discussion? No discussion? Okay. All those in favor of recommending Article P 2112, say aye. Aye. Opposed? So 900 recommendation. The next one is Article P 2113. Shall the town raise and appropriate the sum of $100,000 to be deposited into the existing fire department radio capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35-1 for the purpose of replacement of mobile and portable radios as needed in the future. The funds will be withdrawn from the general fund unassigned fund balance, and that amount is for $100,000. I'll make that motion to recommend it.
I'll second.
Dennis seconded. Okay, discussion? Yeah.
I thought we just replaced the radios 2 years ago. Was incorrect?
My understanding is they replaced the
few.
ones that were damaged and the ones for new ones that needed to come on. But there were some now that, like in the trucks, that aren't working, and the system is not compatible with the other.
The new ones they got,
Yeah,
right?
and the other surrounding towns. So unfortunately, what they need to do is get a whole new system that is now upgradable and everything else, that will now communicate with the other towns who are on mutual aid. So when other towns come to our assistance for mutual aid, a lot of times we can't communicate them with the old radios. And a lot of the radios that they have now are being held together with rubber bands. I mean, they're pretty tired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam?
I have a question and the explanation. I think I know what it is, but I'd just like someone to tell me, mobile and portable radios. I assume they mean the handheld and the ones that are mounted in pieces of apparatus, is that correct?
The mobile is in vehicles and portables are handheld.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, any more discussion? Oh, yep, Bob.
I have another question. So this 100,000, this will not cover the replacement of the these radios now?
According to the explanation, that's half of them.
I'm sorry?
According to the
it's half.
explanation, it says it will purchase half of the needed radios.
Oh, I see that. I got it now. I'm sorry.
So it should, if we wanted to replace all of them, it would have to be 200,000.
Yeah.
Yep, Bob?
How much is in that fund now? The radio reserve fund.
Approximately $32,000.
So can we say that it's going to cost $132,000 to replace half of them? Is that what?
I'm not familiar with the explanation. I would have to speak to the fire chief. Unless, Mark, you have an answer.
I do not.
Okay.
All right, we can move to a vote to recommend. All those in favor of Article P 2113, say aye.
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 Opposed? So 900 is the recommendation. Article P 2114, shall the town vote to raise and appropriate the sum of $50,000 to be deposited into the existing recreation plan capital reserve fund, $25,000, and the funds will be withdrawn from the general unassigned fund balance. Does anyone want to make a motion to recommend that?
I'll make a recommendation.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, discussion? No discussion?
So, yeah, there is some
Okay,
discussion.
yes.
I thought that when the town voted for this new softball field last year, when we had all those people paraded in and how much we needed all these fields, I thought that included the completion of this. I thought that included the dugouts, that included all the fencing, everything else that was needed to do this. Now I'm seeing here it did not. So now we need to come up with more money to finish off the project that they originally came in to get money for to build. So instead of coming in and asking the town to approve the money to complete this project, they're doing it in two phases by coming back and now getting the money from the town to build this. So we now spent the money to build these fields. And now we're being asked again to come up with more money so we can complete it because we didn't take enough, they didn't ask enough to do the project fully. Was that so that we didn't have to, the number was smaller and the town might swallow that? Or why are we being asked for another $50,000 or $25,000 to be raised by taxation?
Bob, go ahead.
This is actually the third year in which we've been asked to fund this. 3 years ago, we were asked to fund this that was supposed to include things that were done this past year. Now we're asked to fund it again this year, and the softball fields were paid for by impact fees that wasn't even a part of these funds that we've approved. This has been going on for so long. It's confusing as to what this is going to pay for.
I don't have the past years in front of me, but I don't think that there was a deposit to the capital reserve fund. They didn't ask for one last year.
Didn't ask
But
for one.
when they did ask for it in the prior years, it did not pass.
Voted
Is
down.
that correct?
So, yeah, last year they didn't ask for it, and the year before it was voted down.
And I believe the year before that was voted down. It was voted down for 2
No.
years.
So if you really want the numbers here, I'd recommend having the rec committee chair come in and answer your questions if you have concerns. I can't answer all the questions or the details. I don't remember everything.
We did send
But
questions.
we went through a lot of discussion during our meeting on what could be held off, what can't, et cetera, and also whether the COVID impacted their actual use and things like that. So maybe if you're really concerned, you can vote on it today, but ask them to come to the next one so you can get your questions answered.
I think we asked those questions already, and they gave us answers in a previous meeting. Go ahead, Bob.
The money was funded 3 years ago in the budget. So it had nothing to do with any warrant article. It was funded through the budget.
Yep.
Last year, it was appropriated at deliberative session. That was what was appropriated there. That was one of those that passed last year. This year, it's in a warrant article. So it has been funded 3 years. This is the third request to fund this project.
Any more discussion, or we can move to a vote on recommending? All those in favor of recommending the Article P 2114, say aye.
Board of Selectmen voted for it,
Yep.
so.
Opposed? So 180. Any other
Money-wise?
money-wise ones? I think that was all of the money ones,
Yeah,
right?
that's the only ones we're listed on.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't know if people are abreast on what happens on Facebook, but there is talk of a citizen's petition being added to the warrant for $295,000 for recycling.
For what?
For recycling, to add
Okay.
recycling into the budget. I just wanted to put that out there so this committee is aware that that is going to be a citizen's petition, and we do have a right to vote on anything with monetary, but it hasn't come before us yet, so we can't vote, but it is
Right.
probably coming.
All right,
Probably next week.
I haven't seen it.
Is there a deadline of when those have to be,
They have to be in by Tuesday, next,
well, I have to have them to present at public hearing, correct?
I believe the deadline is Tuesday.
You're right.
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday.
So we should have that at our meeting.
We should, if it's gonna go forward.
Does anyone want to preemptively start a discussion on their thoughts on that petition?
It's confusing, I will say that. I mean, is the 295 on top of what we approved?
Right.
What I'm
Yes,
assuming
what it says.
You're looking at.
Yep.
And where did the 295 come from?
Taxation.
What's that?
New taxation.
No, I mean, where did
Where
the
did they
number,
get the figure?
where did the figure come from?
I don't know.
Pulled out of the air. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea where that 295 would have come
Well,
from? No.
Somebody made it up somehow.
Yeah.
Do
And
we
by the
even-
way, I do have I want to make a recommendation for a change in the solid waste budget before the meeting's over.
Okay,
That's like giving you a heads up.
okay.
Well, and plus, it doesn't guarantee curbside recycling either.
Right.
And the way it was worded, they worded it for a year, but we have 6 months left on the contract in 2021. So I don't understand why they didn't write it for 6 months rather than a year.
Right, we still have recycling until June.
Yeah, and the thing is, you can't contract somebody for 6 months either, so that's going to put a lot of wrenches into the gears.
Yeah.
Well, without a real number, it's an unreal request.
And it would be
Yeah.
new taxation, it wouldn't come from the unassigned
Right.
fund or anything.
And it doesn't matter if it's unreasonable, if the voters vote for it, they vote for it.
Right.
I believe that if this were to pass, that money would be added to the budget.
Yes, it will. Well, it doesn't get added to the budget
Right.
this year, it'd be a warrant article, and it would go, but, well, it depends on how the warrant article's worded.
Yeah.
It would be added this year to
Yeah,
this year's
2021.
Depends on the
budget.
wording, because I haven't seen it, so.
Right.
I mean, it's the same as the 24/7 fire department coverage. When that passes, it will be added to the budget.
Moving forward
Right.
every year.
If it's
Right,
worded.
so it would be the same thing.
And when a citizen's petition is presented, you can't ask them to change it or
No.
make anything clearer? or-
Deliberative can do some things. It's not, they're not totally, but Board of Selectmen can't take it out.
Right,
It goes in, no matter what.
And as
We
written.
can vote on it. We
Right.
can vote to recommend or not recommend, but we can't,
I don't think it can be changed because you don't have all
Right.
the people there that
Yeah.
signed the original
Right.
petition.
so
Goes in
whatever
as
it
written.
says is what it says.
Right.
Okay.
well, citizens petitions have been changed, can be changed within legal limits during deliberative session because the voters are there.
Okay.
They can change stuff, but they can't just like take it away or make it go away. There are certain, the moderator has the guidelines of what can be changed and what can't be changed.
Well, they have to be careful because the people that signed it as one way.
That's what
And
he
if
was
those
saying.
people aren't there, then you're changing their signature on a warrant that they may not believe in at that point.
Yeah, I believe it was that you cannot change the intent. You can change some wording.
Right.
As long as it doesn't change the intent of
Exactly.
the article.
Well, actually, the law actually says you can't change the subject matter. It does not protect intent, because that went to the Supreme Court in the state. And the people who said people changed their intent, which they did in that case, that went before the Supreme Court a bunch of years back, they lost in court. They butchered a warrant article, and they got away with it. Only because the lawmakers left a loophole in the law. Then when they tried to correct that loophole, it didn't pass through the state legislature. And I think some of it's because the people who were in that committee were in the lawsuit. So you'd have to go back and read that. It's a horrible case of, they had a problem. The judge even said, they agreed with the case, but he had to rule against because the way the law was written, it allowed for it. So it does not protect intent unless they changed it just now. It only protects the subject matter.
So if it's about trash
Yeah.
and stays about trash, then it's pretty much
So-
okay.
If something you really believe in, start writing your state reps and whatever, say, get that thing changed, because you can look it up, you can look on the internet, and you can read the judge's rulings. And it was just shame that they had to rule the way they did, even though they didn't agree with it by law, which they had to rule by the word of the law. They had to vote against the plaintiffs.
Now, we have a solid waste number that's changed.
I guess since we're talking about it, you wanted to talk about that?
I didn't hear what he said back there. The chairs are in the
Solid
way.
waste, you
Solid
said.
waste, you're changing that
Oh,
number?
yes, I didn't know if we were there yet.
We can talk about it now since we're already
Okay,
on the
it's just a
top.
suggestion here. Looking at the different figures, let's see, where was it? All right, the solid waste contract. The JRM's 6-month estimate is around $415,000. The Casella 6-month base fee is about $174,500.
Wait, can you say,
This would be obligations, because we have 6 months and 6 months.
okay,
And then you end up with a 6-month tipping at $176, saying you're running 2,100 tons at $84 a ton. The bulk pickup is about $7,000 for 6 months. Recycling dumpster, which we're getting a recycling dumpster under the current agreement, is $1,554 for 6 months. And the cart contract, which we have, is to get the barrels, is $18,436.20 for the 6 months, which brings the total of $792,490. But then we have to put in the $2,100 for the hazardous waste disposal,
can you say that figure again? 79?
$792,490. And then you need the $21,000 for the solid waste pickup, hazardous waste pickup, which is already there. It would
But-
bring the total to $813,490.
Okay,
This is something we're going to bring up at our selectmen meeting on next week.
our budget worksheet, I believe the solid waste is the, are you saying hazardous waste? Is that under the solid waste disposal?
Hazardous waste is under the solid waste collection. It's the third line item. So if you add that in as well, you voted on last meeting, $789,437. Well, I'm just recommending that you consider $813,490 based on what I said.
813. Can you say it again, Julian?
$813,490.
And can you
This
also,
is only assuming that we go with Casella, this has not been voted on till this coming
We really should
meeting.
wait until we
I
have
would
that.
say you
Which
wait.
is the lower price, by the way. We don't,
Yeah.
there's an assumption here.
I had thought that the hazardous waste, I thought that this last one, Hampstead went with a new company, and it was supposed to be a savings. Do you know anything about that? Have you seen?
No, I don't, but if we can get something cheaper by looking at new provider, I'd be all for it, but that, we don't have that right now.
can you also explain, because if this 813,490 includes recycling via a dumpster that people bring their recyclables to, why would we need to add 295,000?
Well,
Like,
but
we're
it's not
gonna still-
it's not house pickup,
Right.
which
so-
everyone's, they're used to the house pickup. I'm used to the house pickup. But do you want to pay the extra $200-something thousand to
Right.
put it in to everybody? Now,
I thought the general consensus was people just want to recycle because it's the thing to do and it helps cut down on regular solid waste. Is it a
Cuts down-
convenient,
yeah.
is it a convenience thing now? Now it's no. we
now it
just-
doesn't, it used to be that the people who picked up the trash brought that to a recycling center, and they were then paid for it, which reduced the price of them having to come around and pick it all up, because that's expensive. They have to come around with another truck, they have to pick it all up, and that's just like picking up more trash. And they were compensated by getting some money back for it. Well, they don't really get money back for it anymore. They just don't, a lot of it, the place don't even want it. China's not accepting it, so it's changed the whole economy of recycling. Now, yes, I still believe it's the right thing to do for the environment, but is the taxpayer in this town willing to pay for it? And this is happening in
Correct.
not just our town, as new contracts are coming up and getting negotiated, it's not, they're not basing on the same numbers they had years back.
I just think that,
Yeah.
one second, I just think that a citizen's petition to say like, you know, we want to keep recycling in Plaistow is a bit deceiving because we still have recycling and we're going to have a recycling option. It's just not
But
coming.
we still have it for 6 months.
Right, and it's
regardless.
not coming to pick it up at your house. Dennis?
And we are working on it. The RFP isn't out yet, but we intend to get the RFP out to ask another, just a recycling company, what would it cost to come in at, if the residents who want to recycle, which is the
Right.
people who are actually doing it.
Right.
Because we have a 17%,
Yeah.
which is horrible, which more other towns and communities do at least 40. So we're looking to get RFPs out and maybe see what they want for the people who want it, to have it picked up at their home. But regardless, we're working on trying to get people who want to bring it in and dump it off at the
Right.
recycling dumpster. We're already trying to incorporate that now.
Yeah, Dennis?
I think you pretty much answered it, but, so, in order to recycle, it's gonna cost us additional money.
Correct.
Yes. Under the original proposals we got,
Right.
there was a price with the recycle and one without. It was significantly more if you had recycle.
We were in like the $1 million range.
Right.
But for whatever, I think you said it was $1,500 for 6 months for a centrally located dumpster for recyclables?
Right, and a good location might be at the highway garage parking lot because it's central to the town and it could be,
So that-
can be observed and locked, because you don't want a dumpster where people could throw anything in there. It wouldn't be just dump it anytime you want to. It would have to be observable.
So none of the options that you guys are considering are no recycle, or the one you're considering most has a recycling option for people. Nobody's gonna be locked out of recycling.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and we also have a collection center that's up north, a little bit up north. If people want to drive larger items up there or whatever, that's also being negotiated too. So,
If I remember correctly, I don't remember the additional cost for just recycling in some of your talks. It was around the $200,000 figure, if I remember right.
it was in the vicinity, probably say just less.
Right, at 170, maybe, 180?
Yeah.
So that's just for the
And then it was
convenience
for
of
people who
curbside.
weren't recycling, they were still throwing it in the regular trash, and we were paying for the extra tonnage.
Right.
Yeah, and I-
That's,
That's
That's
the
what I don't
sad
think
part.
we
I would recommend in
understand.
this town that
I didn't-
even after we go through this, and if it goes through and we don't have recycling, we form a committee of people and take it seriously this time, come up with some solutions. Because right now, we don't have a solution. Just keeping recycling doesn't help if people aren't actually doing it. Most of the people I have observed doing it are the residents in single-family homes, et cetera, mostly. I see those guys, you drive around, they're doing recycling bins and whatever. And then there's a lot of numbers in apartments and condos and whatever. And I think there's one, I know that, one place does offer recycling, but most of them don't.
yeah.
And when they had a trash committee, nobody responded except for one condominium association, which was sad. And I think I think you were in the trash
I
committee.
was the chair,
And
yeah.
you guys tried to do something, but you just had no cooperation from the community at any level.
Dennis,
So
what-
I say this is something that's not a dead subject, even if we don't get it in the budget.
Right.
It's something we need to find out a solution, if we go back to it, that make it work.
Mm-hmm.
If it actually worked and people actually were recycling, then it might be worth it, but they're not.
Right.
You're
Dennis.
paying for something you're not
Okay.
using.
Dennis, what were you going to say?
I think part of the confusion too is when you look at the percentage of people that recycle, I always thought you look around, you see so many
Yeah.
people
Yeah.
have recycling out.
Yeah.
But not all that is recyclable. Some of that gets mixed in, that's.
Yeah,
where
some
you
people
get
are not doing it right either.
not. Yeah,
Correct. One of the biggest things is what they throw away because it's contaminated. It's not that
exactly.
only 17% of the people in town are recycling.
Exactly.
It's 17% is what's being actually recycled.
Collected
Yep.
for recycling,
Yep.
yeah. Well,
Then it ends up adding to the tonnage of the regular trash, which then they charge us more once you go over a certain limit, which is a lot.
well,
So
we'll
it's
go-
a shame.
we'll-
You get it twice. You're paying for recycling you don't use, then you're getting hit for the weight of it again because you're not actually recycling it.
So you're going to have your meeting on Monday with.
Yeah, we're
about
gonna
this,
talk
so-
about these numbers again Monday, because we
Okay,
haven't had our
so-
meeting since these figures.
So we'll discuss this Tuesday before the public hearing.
Yes, and I don't know if you want to vote on this or not, or,
No, I think
No.
we could
We
wait.
only have
Okay.
two things to really, before the
Yeah,
public hearing.
we can
Yeah.
wait until,
but you got a heads up on why the number, where
Yeah,
the
no.
number comes from.
that's,
There's also a couple things I was asked to bring up.
Okay, we just
planning?
went to trash,
Yeah,
so
that's for
now
trash.
we're
We're
gonna
done with
move.
trash.
Right, I will do this under new business, because I have other stuff on the agenda. We were talking about trash, so that's why we talked about it.
Okay.
You can bring that stuff up afterwards. The next thing on the agenda is encumbrances. Did you want to go over them?
Sure, I'd like to talk a little bit about it. Basically, as a budget committee member, and I'll give you my remarks of what I'm going to say as an auditor also, and Bob and I will be giving the board our recommendations, but right now, I'd like to do it just like the meeting. I'd like to go through, say a few things about encumbrances to start with, and then I'd like a vote from the committee to see what your feelings are on each one of the encumbrances. I sent all of you a little bit of information, but one of the things that we had a little bit of a argument last time with Greg was that on Article or RSA 32.7. Well, I did a little bit of research and looked up some of the other towns and what they're doing. And I think it would be a good idea if if each of you looked at the Atkinson Board of Selectmen meeting for December 21st at about an hour 32, where they specifically say, although it's a little bit garbled, that they have to get the encumbrances approved by December 31st. I called some town, and they have even scheduled emergency meetings for December 30th so that they could approve the encumbrances, because that's what RSA 32.7, the law says. So as far as I'm concerned, our encumbrances have gone by the approval date, and I don't see how approval of these encumbrances can be legal. Having said that, I still think that we should give the Board of Selectmen our advice on the encumbrances as they have been presented to us by Greg Colby. To give you some other information, I received a phone call from Bruce Knauer from the New Hampshire DRA. He referred to the letter, which I think you all have seen, about the Budget Committee having review authority of encumbrances. He was adamant that we had misconstrued his statement. The Budget Committee does not have that authority. Once they become appropriation, once they are spent, then the Budget Committee can do something about it. But before that, no, the Budget Committee does not look at encumbrances. But I still think it's something that would be worthwhile to get your opinion on, to at least send to the Board of Selectmen, along with the auditor opinions. So with that, I'd like to go into the encumbrances, and not to take a long time, but encumbrance number one is the assessing for Cochrane for $45,000 for the update. Now, I say to myself, what's going on? There was a contract with Vision signed on March 16th, 2020 for $40,000, and they should have done this. And maybe the town wasn't keeping up on it, and maybe the Cochrane agency wasn't helping them out enough, but now we're paying twice for the same update. I would think that the contract with Visions, they should have done a decent job, and we should just try to get them to do a better job rather than going back to the old assessing firm that has been publicly stated to me that they don't really have a good feel for the commercial aspect. And therefore, and so that is my opinion right now. So could I have a show of hands of the people who think that the assessing contract as given to us is acceptable?
Can I just make
Yeah.
a comment? So Pete, based on what you had said earlier, is you had said that, I forget who the gentleman's was, but he said that this was not, I forget how you exactly worded it, but this was not a role of the budget committee? Is that correct, what you had said?
That was basically what Bruce Canower told me on the phone.
Yeah.
His statement was, in a town with an official municipal, I'm reading from his email, with an official budget act committee such as Plaistow, such a budget committee has expenditure review authority under RSA 322223.
Okay. So based on that statement, I'm going to abstain from voting.
It what?
He's going
I'm
to
going to abstain on that because I don't feel this is a role of the budget committee.
Okay.
That's my own personal opinion and based on,
You don't want to give the budget committee's opinion to the Board of Selectmen?
no, I don't think it's our role.
Does everybody else think that's the same way on all the encumbrances? If that's it, I think the discussion's over.
I think my concern is, do we have contracts? If the contracts exist, then that's all that we should be concerned about. Not necessarily how the contracts are being spent, but if there is a contract, then
Well,
it's legitimate.
that is my opinion also, and on this particular one, I, as an auditor, will say it's acceptable. As a budget committee member, I say we're spending too much money, we're spending it twice. That's what I would say.
And I think that's something, when we were going over the assessing budget, we could have said, hey, we already paid for this, why are we paying for it again?
So
That would be where that would.
that's my
come
feeling,
from.
Dennis.
So,
So would that be the general feeling of the committee, that giving your opinion to the Board of Selectmen on the encumbrances as presented is either a waste of time or uncalled for?
Bob?
Bob?
I believe that it is our responsibility. It's an appropriation. RSA 32:7 is a part of budget law. Chapter 32 of the budget law is really what we go by. This is what we've been elected to enforce. It's under appropriations, and appropriations will lapse at the end of the fiscal year, and any unexpended portion thereof will be expended without any further appropriation. In other words, it'll lapse. It'll go back to the general fund if it's not utilized. One way that it can be utilized is by encumbering it before the end of the fiscal year. So in my opinion, if it hasn't been appropriated, if it hasn't been encumbered at this point, it's already past the deadline, and I think we're wasting our time even discussing it.
I just have a
Beautiful,
quick
fine.
question.
Go ahead.
I guess what I'm trying to wrap my head around, Pete, and forgive me because I'm not sure, is that you're feeling that the stuff that hasn't been encumbered should go back into a general fund or back to the people of the town? I'm lost in that portion of it. In other words, if I go by what you're saying, there, and it hasn't been encumbered at this point, then it's money that's floating out there that would be in the general fund.
No, Darrell, what I'm saying is this. If you've got a contract with Continental Paving for $10,000,
Okay?
you spent $8,000 of it, and you haven't completed the job, you've got $2,000 left to go. it has to be encumbered to come out of last year's budget. If
Okay.
you don't encumber it, you're still obligated to pay that money, but it comes out of this year's budget.
I got you.
That's what encumbrances, I believe, are for.
Okay,
To-
I got
From
you.
last year's money that you've spent and are obligated to take it out of last year's budget.
Right. That's
It's
what
not
we,
to take out for a future contract, as some of these encumbrances are, future contract. You can't encumber a future contract. It's for last year's contract. That's my opinion. And according to the RSA, it has to be approved by December 31st, by the end of the fiscal year. That's
Okay.
why all, the towns that I polled all had meetings in the last week of the year. Every one, it appears.
On the flip side of the coin, Pete, educate me, please. If that money doesn't get used and it was not properly encumbered, it goes into the general fund. Now, supposedly, this project still needs to be done. Now what? They start from scratch?
They have to appropriate it out of this year's budget,
But it
2021.
hasn't, but it hasn't been put in.
It's a lot better to spend last year's money, and that's why we get
I
this.
understand, I just, if we do what you're asking and don't, well, we can't really do it, I don't think we have the authority, but if those encumbrances are found null and void, the money goes into the
General
general
fund.
fund, unassigned fund, and assuming that these projects still need to be done, does the town, or the Board of Selectmen, or the town manager have to start over again with getting new contracts and trying to pay for something that wasn't budgeted for?
In my estimation, no, they're not gonna get new contracts. They just gotta find the money from this year's fund.
From the next year's budget?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what encumbrances do. They take last year's money and pay for the contracts that haven't been completed.
Right, but if the money is not in the following year's budget, because they were planning on using it from the years before?
I don't know what you do.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out how.
Maybe you take it out of the contingency fund. Maybe you take it out of the fund, you put it on, it's zero-based budgeting, and we saw that, a generator come out of that last year. Maybe they just take it out of, oops, we made a mistake.
I just wanted to see the whole scenario, how it happens.
I don't know.
Personally, if there was a signed contract in front of me, I have no problem giving it my approval, but without a signed contract in front of me, I'm not comfortable voting on anything.
I have a question. So if these encumbrances, the total, if I'm looking at the list in front of me, $213,891.60, if they weren't approved by December 31st, and it is too late, that money, that 213 would have, 213,000 would have to come out of, they would have to either try to find it in the 2021 budget or not. Or
No,
it
that's
wouldn't
not
happen.
right.
What's-
It's not right, Bob.
No,
Some of it would be right, but one of the encumbrance is that, and I hadn't thought about this before, is like the number 5, the police want money for to transfer, change over 10 AR-15s for Colt 223s. There's no contract for that yet. There's only an estimate. So that encumbrance, I would say, is not acceptable, and therefore the money has not been appropriated. There is no contract from 2020 to change over those rifles for some reason. I don't know what it would be. Therefore, that encumbrance would just go away,
Right.
okay? Because there is no contract.
Right.
Anything that doesn't have a contract does not have to come out of next year's, out of 2021 funds.
Well, here we are, just, for instance, this AAA police supply, this quote is valid until 12/31/2020. So here we are, January 5th. New quote, new price? I don't know.
Well, my understanding was the new clothes were for the officers that we've now put on, correct?
Right, I'm just saying this quote, the date on the quote
Yes.
has passed.
I
It's
understand
passed.
that.
This isn't for, this is, it looks to me
It's, gear,
It's gear for the new guns, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
No,
So,
that's just one of the things. If we don't have a contract, we're not obligated for it. And therefore, it can't be an encumbrance, and therefore, it would just go away.
I understand that.
What we were talking about last week was the fact that it doesn't necessarily have to be signed contract with contract on the top. It has to be a legal enforceable obligation. In other words, the vendor has to agree to give a service or a product for a specific price to the town. And the town has to agree to, yes, we want that product. So there has to be a legally binding agreement. And it can be in the form of an estimate,
Like
purchase
all
order,
else, right, that I'm
an
looking at.
estimate and a purchase order combined, as long as both parties know that they have agreed to doing this. The ones that you provided us with, Pete, was from the other towns. Each one of those listed a specific price that was being encumbered for a specific item or service for a specific vendor and a purchase order number in the final column. It was all very cut and dry and easy to figure out, rather than going through all of these papers that we have been provided.
I appreciate why you want to discuss this as a budget committee, and I do see merit in, you know, making sure that funds are appropriated appropriately.
Yeah.
But given the past few weeks, I don't think that the Board of Selectmen cares about our recommendation, and I just think that it's futile to even give it to them, because they're not going to listen anyway.
Right.
That's my personal opinion.
Max, I agree with you, and I agree with Dennis, that after this conversation that I had with DRA, the Budget Committee has nothing to do with encumbrances before they are enacted, when they become spent.
Appropriated or, yeah.
When they become funds that was spent, then the Budget Committee should be able to say, why did you spend the money on this? But that doesn't happen.
So, I mean, I don't really think we need
So
to.
going through the list and getting a recommendation
Yeah.
from you, I agree, is worthless.
Okay. The next thing is new business, old business. Minutes are in, and I just want to draw everybody's attention to, we already discussed it earlier with the issue, how we had the wrong finance number, and Charlene wrote the wrong number at the end. So do we want to amend that?
Where are we? Exactly.
Minutes, last page, 15. So according to the actual meeting, it should have been that 183, let me go to my papers.
I don't know where I put it either.
I know,
Yeah, right here, 183, 325.
so that's what we said at the meeting, that number, the minute, to reflect the minutes, to reflect the meeting in the minutes, it should be 183, 325. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Discussion.
Yep.
That's what my name's spelled correctly?
The
Do
Z.
16% off my six-letter name. First page, my name's spelled wrong. It's missing the Z.
No, it was right.
Okay.
Just put a big Z down, like Zorro.
I like that, by the way.
Okay, any more discussion? So, as amended, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Oppose, abstain, 900. The minutes are approved as amended. Julian, did you say you had new business to add?
Yeah, I just said a comment on the planning and the government buildings. On planning, The collective bargaining agreement for town employees approved by the legislative body, recommended by the Board of Selectmen 4-1 and the Budget Committee 7-2, warrant article P 1907. This budget is pretty much level funded from last year, the planning, with the exception of the salary line. We are contractually obligated to pay increases by contract, so just like with the health officer salary. So I'd recommend that you modify the planning budget back to, or up to 97,561. And that's just a recommendation. Want to look at it.
Okay.
You can't reduce budgets that require a contractually obligated salary.
Is overtime included in that planning board budget?
I'd have to go look at it now, but
And I believe the planning assistant, I'm not sure what the title is, but they also get paid out of the water budget because they do a lot of water projects.
well, some items are paid under different budgets, depending, if a
So-
person does 4 jobs, they might end up part of their salary under 4 different departments,
Right.
possibly. That's true.
So, I mean, it's not a huge
Yep.
increase, decrease either way. Is there other ones you want to address?
All right, government buildings. It says bulk of the expenditures increase comes from the Public Works garage and not the annex, as described at the last Budget Committee meeting. 17,600 for the annex versus 34,500 for the Public Works garage. These are both 2 new buildings that came in online at the end of the last year. So there's no prior history for these buildings. We can't just ignore expenses associated with these buildings that we don't have a history on yet.
Yeah, we do have a history on the courthouse. We've had a history on the courthouse for as long as I can remember in this town.
I'm not talking about the courthouse,
Well, the annex is the old
Yeah.
courthouse.
but the Public Works garage, we have no
No,
Clue
on the
what it's
public
gonna
works
be
we
yet.
don't, but you said the annex also.
true.
And the annex, we have plenty of history on. Because we were paying most of the bills for the courthouse there.
Did the Board of Selectmen
Could
have
I,
like?
could I just correct something? And Greg can follow up. When it was a triple net lease with the courthouse, they paid their own utilities. So we do not have the history of their utilities.
Okay?
That's true, they paid their own utilities. We just took a rent, which we don't get anymore.
Lori?
Can I ask Julian a question? Is your list to add back everything that we took out?
Not necessarily all.
How much does your list add up to?
We were just recommending adding 40,000 back up. And this is not official, the Board of Selectmen hasn't discussed it, but I'm just trying to give you a
Well,
heads up.
I was going to ask, where, is this coming from our meeting?
Your
Like, or
previous
did you-
meeting-
Did the Board of Selectmen meet and,
We did not meet yet. We
Okay.
didn't have a meeting till next Monday.
which is why I don't know
Yeah.
where it's coming from now.
Yeah,
So these are your concerns?
yes.
Okay.
Well, this is probably
And
a
if you don't
preempt to
do
what's
it, then
going
you
to
don't
happen
do
at
it. It'll
deliberative.
probably be on discussion the next Monday night.
Well, we have public hearing.
But I'm just making the point that you can't just say you can't discount bills that you know you're gonna have and you have no history on. So then what happens is you're gonna be shortchanged. So,
Can I make can you, I'd like to hear you finish your list.
Yep.
And then I would also think that we would probably wait until the Board of Selectmen hear what you have to say about that before we start changing things again.
I'm fine with that. I just wanted to make sure I brought it up this meeting, so you're not.
Did you finish? Was that it? or-
I'm finished.
Oh, okay.
Bob, did you have your hand up?
I was just going to say that that Public Works garage has been operating now for a year. This past year was Phase 2, which was the salt shed. So we do have a history of the Public Works building.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's kind of random. How many years was the courthouse there after the library left? Is it,
I gotta say, at least,
10?
let me think.
A long time.
No, more than 10, I
Well,
think.
the library's
Sam,
going on
right?
like 20 years, right?
Yeah, it's got to be
Library was
25
at least
years.
that long.
courthouse was there the whole
25.
time?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so any utilities that were back then are pretty much,
right.
No,
Yeah,
garbage.
I was thinking the same with that.
And I'm hoping that the annex is
bulldozed?
temporary thing until COVID is over.
Okay. Yeah, Pete.
Where is the public hearing going to be held next week?
Here,
This room?
yep, we're gonna meet early at 6:30. Are you talking about deliberative or public hearing? We have a public.
Public hearing.
Yeah, so we have a public hearing on the budget next week. We're meeting early to go over these things. And then the public hearing's at 7.
Right here.
Yep. Then-
We're on new business or old business. Just, I didn't know if Laurie was gonna bring this up or not, but the warrant article that you had emailed to us, is that gonna be presented to the Board of Selectmen
Old
Julie?
Home Day?
for Old Home Day?
Yeah,
Yeah, do you know anything about?
that's what the chair said.
Okay, good.
Yes.
I didn't know about that.
Just speaking with people off the one-on-one or whatever, it's probably nobody's going to be against that proposal.
Okay,
It's a fair proposal.
yep. So
Doesn't change
we'll
change
give a
anything.
recommendation on
It
that
doesn't change
also.
anything except the way you spend it.
That was the warrant article to take the money from the, this year's unreserved fund balance and put it into the fund for Old Home Day,
Right.
Yes,
when we
Thank you to
defunded.
Laurie for developing that.
yeah.
Yes.
So it was
Oh, you're
worded
welcome.
very well.
And I just, one caution, just hopefully it doesn't fail and then you can't have an Old Home Day.
Well, I
Because
think,
anytime you put something on a warrant article, you never know what year it is or what mood people are in that day.
I think
Good
this,
warrant articles have failed in the past, so you are addressing that I don't think people would be against Old Home Day, but then we've never had a vote on it before,
but
so.
we're also
we'll
not
find out.
probably gonna have it this year.
Right.
Right,
And that was the whole premise behind
Right.
that.
right.
You can cross your fingers, who knows, maybe.
All I can say is the only time as chairman that I ever got any emails was when we tried to cut the budget for the Old Home. There you go.
Yeah, but it's not gonna be the select few that are passionate about it, it's
Yeah.
gonna be all the voters,
Right.
the entire voting community. We don't know what the entire voting community feels on it, we'll find out now.
Okay,
Right.
Well, if you remind them that the beer tent was supposed to be here this year.
That's why
we
Julie's so
tried.
passionate.
We tried, but it got canceled.
the swilling tent?
Yes.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was a great idea. We were gonna have police cordon it off by the law with the police officers saying to make sure no one drinks outside the thing and whatever. And yeah, it was a pretty good idea.
We could probably do like T-shirt fundraisers
see in
that
the
said like
future how it works
Plaistow
out.
Swillers or something.
I know somebody that has some pretty good
find out.
property, maybe we could just go there instead and socially distance. I'm just saying, Sam, I don't know who I'm talking about. but-
Anytime.
Well, we'll see what happens in mid-year.
Yep,
Yeah.
My
All
crystal
right,
ball
I
doesn't
will-
know the answer.
How many Julia, how many people can fit on the town green at 6-foot intervals?
I have no idea. I'm not calculating it, and I don't think it's practical. People gotta
okay.
move around too.
I'll adjourn the meeting at 8:50, thank you.
Thank you.
I